in the last 2 years, the diamond market has undergone a massive change. The sudden surge in demand for lab-grown diamonds has caused a complete disruption in the natural diamond market. It's very interesting to me how the prices of natural diamonds have corrected 40% since 2022.
Natural demand is falling because people are moving more and more towards lab. To kind of give you an example, 2% of engagement rings in 2018 in the US had a lab-grown center. Now it's 55%.
Does that impact both businesses equally?
Falling lab-grown prices actually does help this, especially in a culture in India where there's maximalism in terms of dressing. The use case changes. You can have a diamond belt, a diamond tiara, Angaras in India as well.
You guys have 70% of your business that comes from colored gemstones, right? So tell me a little bit about that.
A lot of celebrities are opting for gemstone engagement rings. Victoria Beckham has emerald, ruby, sapphire, all 3 engagement rings. Even in men's jewelry, so if you look at the Met Gala, Diljit had a huge Maharaja Patiala type necklace. SRK had jewelry, colored gemstone jewelry on.
So Ankur, what happens to this industry, the natural diamond industry? People who are sitting on inventory, what happens to all of that?
Yeah, so.
Hey guys, welcome to The Money Mindset. Now, in the last 2 years, the diamond market has undergone a massive change. The sudden surge in demand for lab-grown diamonds has caused a complete disruption in the natural diamond market. In fact, I hear that prices of natural diamonds have fallen by 40% since March of 2022. Now, this of course has been driven by a rise in lab-grown diamonds and a shift in consumer values towards transparency, ethics, and affordability. Today, I speak to Angara, which is a brand that has a 350-year legacy in gemstones and jewelry making and is a $100 million global fine jewelry brand. Aditi and Ankur Daga took a bold bet in colored gemstones and lab-grown diamonds, and it's working for them. They believe lab-grown diamonds are chemically, physically, and optically exactly the same as natural diamonds. So the big question is, what happens to the natural jewelry market over the next few years? Aditi, Ankur, thank you so much for being with me on The Money Mindset.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, really excited. Thank you.
And you've flown all over the world, and now you guys are in Mumbai. So it's been a hectic 1 month for you.
Absolutely. We're happy to be here.
Yeah, India's an exciting place to be.
It's very interesting to me how the prices of natural diamonds have corrected 40% since 2022. And this is happening after, I think, decades, right? Just tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, so for many decades, as you mentioned, diamond prices have outpaced inflation by a couple of percent. So they've been traditionally a pretty good investment from that perspective. And you get to wear it. So you get to flaunt it, show it off, all of that. So, but I think the core thesis around diamonds historically has been twofold. One is there's a financial flex. So if you're wearing a 2 to 3 carat solitaire ring, that says something about your socioeconomic status. Second is it's been a great inflation hedge and has done relatively well as an investment. Both of those theses have kind of fallen apart because of lab grown. So you could buy a lab grown today for 95% cheaper than the natural equivalent. So that financial flex is gone. They've dropped 40% in price, as you mentioned, which is why the investment thesis is also gone. And that's primarily why lab-grown is growing so quickly.
So when you talk about a 40% fall in natural diamond prices, is it globally or is it specifically in India? And do you think prices could correct further as the demand for lab-grown rises?
Yeah, so the prices have fallen globally. The market is, whether you're buying in Bombay or New York, the pricing is very similar. Right now, prices have stabilized over the last 6 months. But I think it's much more a function of supply than demand. So De Beers and other mining companies have restricted supply output just to keep prices where they are. But natural demand is falling because people are moving more and more towards lab. So to kind of give you an example, 2% of engagement rings in 2018 in the US had a lab-grown center. Now it's 55%. So meteoric rise and correspondingly a drop for natural diamond demand.
So you're saying 55% of engagement rings in the US now have lab-grown diamonds?
Yeah, the majority.
As the center.
That's right. Yeah. And it used to be only 2%. So, back to 2018, the Federal Trade Commission in the US said a lab-grown diamond is a diamond because they're chemically, physically, optically identical. You just have to disclose whether it is mined from the earth or it comes from a lab. And that started this whole movement. And back then, in 2018, lab-grown diamonds were 15% cheaper, so the value proposition was not as strong. Now that you can buy them for 1/10 to 1/20th the price, the value proposition is so much stronger, and people are migrating in that direction.
Wow, Aditi, that's so interesting to me because For years, buying a natural diamond was not just a flex, as Ankur said. It was also about legacy. It was about investment, right?
Yes.
People would invest in buying for their daughters-in-law. And now suddenly the entire concept is just toppled on its head.
I think there's some behavioral changes also that have happened in society. So that singular idea of perfection, that DIF diamond that people thought that's the perfect stone, we've changed as humans. We're now able to embrace our flaws. We like the inclusions in colored gemstones as well. So that value of the diamond is not there anymore. Your preference for emerald green is different than mine. And so preferences have just changed.
So when you talk about preferences changing, right, you're saying 55% of engagement rings now have lab-grown diamonds. The question to ask then is, what is the viability, the durability, and the value of lab-grown diamonds? Because even lab-grown diamonds as a market has come off quite a bit. Prices have fallen quite a bit. So then one speaks about, if for a discerning buyer or investor, wouldn't they then prefer natural over lab-grown?
So for the discerning buyer, I think there are two categories of diamonds that still hold tremendous value. One are diamonds of provenance. So who owned it before? Which region was it mined from? Those diamonds are truly rare. So those are great investments, as well as colored diamonds. We've seen that in recent auctions where they've had record pricing. The other category for discerning buyers is colored gemstones. The rubies, really high quality gemstone rubies, sapphires, rubellite, those really hold tremendous value.
And you guys have 70% of your business that comes from colored gemstones, right? So
Mm.
tell me a little bit about that. How has demand risen in the last, say, 1 year or so? And compared to natural diamonds, lab-grown diamonds, colored gemstone, what does the landscape look like right now?
So in the last 10 years in the US, 5% of engagement rings 10 years ago used to be colored gemstones, so primarily sapphire, but then also emerald ruby as well. Now it's over 15%. A lot of celebrities are opting for gemstone engagement rings. Victoria Beckham has emerald, ruby, sapphire, all three engagement rings, for example. And so the growth has been pretty tremendous. Interestingly, I think it's beyond even jewelry. Now, if you look at iPhones, they're sold in so many different colors, where it used to be slate gray or black or white. Same thing with supercars. It used to be 80% of Ferraris were Rosa Corsa red. Now they're in a multitude of colors. So we're kind of seeing the shift towards color in everything. Even in men's jewelry. So if you look at the Met Gala, Diljit had a huge Maharaja Patiala type necklace. SRK had jewelry, colored gemstone jewelry on. So I think just the mega trends are very much towards gemstones. And even at the very high end of the market, let's say like Sotheby's, Christie's, Phillips, all the auction houses, all of the pieces that are trading, or a lot of the pieces that are trading at 2 to 3 times high multiples, are gemstone pieces. People have really shifted to investing in gemstones and away from diamonds.
And in India, how big is the colored gemstone market right now? And how much do you think it can grow to over the next decade?
So ironically, it's tiny. So just kind of as just stepping back. So the overall jewelry industry worldwide is roughly $400 billion,
Okay.
85 billion in the US, 85 billion in India. So these are the top two markets in the world. Even though US GDP is 7x India's GDP, the market size is the same just because of the cultural significance of jewelry here. Everybody here already knows about color, yet color is only 2% of the market.
Why is that?
So I think historically what has happened, so if you look at, for example, the Nizam's collection or the Maharaja Patiala, it's all about color. If we fast forward to now, most people in India think of jewelry as an investment. And historically, color has not been something that you can easily sell back. So part of our launch in India is we're going to be the first company to make the market for color, kind of like a bid-ask spread in equities, where every year we will publish annual appreciation or depreciation by gemstone for the top 40 gemstones. So if you ever wanted to sell back or exchange, you'll be able to do it with us. So we'll make the market simultaneously because we want to showcase that it is a great investment. The 10-year CAGRs on sapphires and pearls, for example, has been 15% per annum. So they're up 4 times over the last 10 years, outpacing gold, outpacing diamonds by far, of course, because diamonds have depreciated. And outpacing the Sensex and the S&P as well.
Natural sapphire.
Natural sapphires and pearls. And so stones like rubellite, for example, have gone up 7x over the last 10 years. There's a lot of supply-demand dynamics per gemstone that are idiosyncratic that we can get into if you would like. But there's a whole story that I think the top 0.01% has understood. That's why Sotheby's is kind of migrating to color, for example. But we would love to showcase it for the rest of the world so everybody can kind of participate in this.
Wow, that's interesting to me because I take your point entirely. I don't think the market for gemstones has even been explored in India. Colored gemstones, that is, right?
Yep.
I'll come to that in a bit. But before that, I want to dive deep into this whole diamond market because it's really interesting to me. How big is the diamond market globally? If you can just step back and give us a little bit of history of how De Beers or the diamond market actually made natural diamonds appear to be so scarce, and hence, this whole demand supply mismatch, or is it just a very, very strategically done marketing gimmick?
So this is kind of like a 300-year-old story. So let me start 300 years ago and I'll quickly fast forward. So the majority of the world's studded jewelry market used to be colored gemstones, and diamonds was one of 40 different gemstones. 1947, De Beers launched A Diamond is Forever. The concept of an engagement ring, the concept of a 2-month salary type concept for buying an engagement ring. So if you love your soon-to-be spouse, get her a bigger diamond. And it worked tremendously well. Combined with the concept of D-flawless, essentially something that's colorless and flawless. And they established a whole grading scale. They controlled at that point 80% of the supply. So they invested a ton of marketing dollars around this idea of diamonds being scarce. In theory, they are. In practice, De Beers used to restrict output. And so how scarce is arguable. And so they really built the market in a way that 90% of the studded market all of a sudden became diamonds. And it used to be majority color. So that's kind of the backstory. What happened in 2011, and that's when things started getting a little bit rocky, is Anglo-American bought De Beers. They stopped investing in the diamond marketing engine. So what used to be the most successful marketing campaign of all time, all of a sudden they stopped investing money in it. And
Why
so
is that?
Gen Z today, they were trying to optimize cash flow. They're owned by a big mining company. They weren't looking at it as a strategic investment in terms of sustaining for 100 years, the diamond story. So Gen Z today has never actually been exposed to A Diamond is Forever and all of that, which opens Gen Z up to pretty much everything else.
Wow. So the dream that we were sold is not a dream, unfortunately, not a dream anymore for the next generation.
It's changed.
Yeah.
Diamonds are still beautiful. They're great.
But so are gemstones.
But so are gemstones.
Wow, that is interesting to me, because for the longest time, I have never invested in diamonds, to be honest, except my engagement ring. That's all I have. And I always felt like there was never any resale value in diamonds. And then this whole influx of lab-grown diamonds happened. So I'm so glad that, I chose the other. Because, diamonds are beautiful. Yeah. If you can get a lab-grown diamond at 90% cheaper and the appeal is the same, right? Then why not? So I completely take your point and I'm in this with you. Okay, so now where are we at in terms of, I'm sure De Beers is like palpitating because of what's happening with the natural diamond market. Yeah. So where are we at right now?
So we could start with De Beers. So De Beers revenue in 2022 was $6.6 billion. 2024 was $3.3 billion. In a very high fixed cost business, having half your revenue drop is certainly very problematic. So cash flow is negative. Now they're in a very difficult place where in order to increase revenue, they have to increase output, which decreases prices. So they're kind of in a chicken and the egg situation. And lab-grown, because lab-grown is still growing, it's not growing at the meteoric pace of the past because it's already the majority of centers for engagement rings, for example, it's still growing, which is placing further pressure on natural diamond demand, therefore pricing. So structurally, I think, here on out, it will be a challenging market for natural diamonds, going forward. I think, in terms of just what we sell, so we sell, lab-grown diamonds, natural diamonds, lab-grown gemstones, natural gemstones. So we're agnostic as to what people buy. Our purpose is really just to educate on this is what the difference is. Lab-grown will not retain value like natural for both color and for diamonds. But it gives you a very specific look. at a compelling price point, something that you've perhaps always wanted. Now you can afford it. So I'll give you an example in the US. So the prototypical engagement ring, the one everybody wanted, was a 2 to 3 carat diamond engagement ring, right? The Tiffany 2 carat. That used to be $25,000 to $50,000, and the average engagement ring budget in the US was $6,000. So it was out of reach. Now, all of a sudden, with lab grown for $5,000, you can get a 3 carat ring with any setting that you can dream of. So now everybody can get exactly what they've always wanted, which for us is super exciting.
Yeah.
I think it's a huge deal.
We actually did a national survey in the US, and we expect India to follow similar trends where over half of Gen Z actually preferred a 3 carat lab grown diamond to a 1 carat natural. So that shows that, they now that they can get the ring of their dreams, why not? They have a choice finally.
So was a natural diamond always purchased just for flex? Because if you're ready to now get a lab-grown diamond at half the price or 90% cheaper, which means no one's really looking at resale value of diamonds, right?
And that's the problem. I think, like Ankur mentioned, it's not for an asset purchased lab-grown diamonds, but I think it's like any other luxury purchase. You buy an expensive bag, you get utility out of it, you use it. The gold will still, obviously, it's an all-time high and it will retain its value. So there's some resale value in the jewelry piece itself, but the diamond itself won't have any resale value. So you look at it as any other luxury purchase.
Okay. The next question that I have is, now if natural diamond prices are coming off, lab-grown diamond prices are also coming off, and there is this whole confusion between what the eventual value of a diamond will be if you can't tell the difference between both. Does that impact both businesses equally? The demand?
So I think lab-grown prices have already come down so much where a further decrease won't really result in a decrease in terms of the retail price, because it's like clothing or anything else. It's already kind of stabilized. On the natural diamond side, the miners are artificially holding up prices, arguably. So for the last 6 months, they've reduced supply. And site holders have been buying less, or their direct customers, the De Beers and others, because they want to maintain prices. As soon as they start opening up the spigot there, then prices will continue to drop. So that core investment thesis that used to be there for decades is largely gone. The two exceptions are what Aditi was mentioning. So, for example, diamonds with provenance, Cullinan diamonds, for example, with a rich history from royalty in Europe, that will still retain value, but it's very
That's the
specific
ultra premium market. Yeah.
Exactly. And the other ultra premium part is color diamonds, so pinks, blues, reds. But again, that's like the 0.001%, so it's not really relevant for most.
What falling lab-grown prices actually does help is, especially in a culture in India where there's maximalism in terms of dressing, the use case changes also. It's no longer just solitaire studs, right? You can have a diamond belt, a diamond tiara. Eventually, it could be studded in lehengas in India as well. So I think that the use case just expands. So, that lab-grown diamond prices changing won't change the jewelry market, but it'll just expand the market.
So how big is the lab-grown diamond market in India currently? And how much do you think it could grow to over the next 5 to 10 years?
So, as we mentioned earlier, in the US, it's already gone from 2% to 55% of engagement ring center stones in 7 years, right? So that's about a 60% growth per year. On a conservative estimate, I think in India, it can easily grow about 25% at least per year.
Wow, 25% growth per year.
Yeah.
In lab grown. So in terms of absolute numbers, do you have any absolute numbers in terms of where are we at? Just trying to understand the natural market, where are we at right now? Lab grown, where are we at? And what could the growth look like?
So if we're divided between gold jewelry, diamond jewelry, and colorstone jewelry, so 88% of India currently is gold jewelry, so 22 karat primarily. You have 10% that's diamond jewelry, split between diamond and lab, and predominantly natural still. I would say probably 90 to 95% natural, 5 to 10% lab, and color is less than 2%. So, but what's happened, but I think the market's shifting very quickly. So 3 days ago, the Indian government is now hallmarking 9 karat gold. And that's a huge move. All of a sudden, so historically, India's been a 22 karat market. With studded jewelry, you need 14 or 18. And because gold has become so expensive, they're starting to hallmark 9 carat as well. And so all of a sudden, it opens up huge avenues for diamonds and color stones because you invest less in the gold part of the piece and therefore correspondingly more in the color or diamond part of the piece. So I think that will also really spur demand. So that 10% diamond, combining natural and lab in that, can easily be 20% in 5 to 10 years. That 2%, I think, gets to another 20%, which brings it more in line with what's happening in the US and more globally in general. The one other thing I would add here is, if you look at most industry analysts, they're projecting 4 to 5% growth for the next 10 years for the worldwide jewelry industry. So that 400 billion gets like 620 billion. We actually think because of lab, in general, it gets to $1 trillion in 10 years. So like a 10% growth rate. So I'll give you an example in India and the US. So in the US, the couple that could not afford a 2 to 3 carat ring, now all of a sudden they can upgrade to that for less than $5,000. So there's a whole upgrade cycle that's happening and it's expanding the market. People that would have never dreamt of buying diamond jewelry can. Similarly, in India, it's been out of reach for many. And all of a sudden, because of lab, people can now buy diamond jewelry.
But do you see a lot of women upgrading from a natural diamond to a bigger lab-grown solitaire?
In the US,
Absolutely,
yeah. It's a huge phenomenon right now. I'll give you kind of just rough statistics. 2.5 million engagements in the US every year, but there's 62 million married couples. So that 62 million is it's a much bigger market. And many of those people have bought a 1/2 carat or 3/4 carat center diamond, which they've considered small just because of how they've grown up. And now all of a sudden they can afford this.
So they are agnostic to the fact that it's natural or lab grown. It's just that if the size is bigger, the appeal is the same.
Precisely.
But I think for boomers, there's a lot of education that's going to be needed. Right now, Gen Z completely accepts lab-grown diamonds, right? In the boomer segment, they're used to diamond similarities like cubic zirconia, moissanite, and they're like, oh, those aren't the same. And Gen Z is buying online. The moment baby boomers actually go in the stores and they will compare them side by side, that the lab-grown is chemically, physically, optically identical. This is a far superior diamond substitute than they've ever seen before. They'll convert even faster. So that will help expand this lab-grown diamond market as well.
Interesting. So you're saying that Gen Z has completely accepted the fact that, lab-grown and natural diamonds, the quality is the same, but it's hard for not just boomers, but even millennials to kind of accept. Wow. Why do you think that is? Because of what? Because of conditioning, I guess, of many years of the marketing that was sold to them?
Conditioning plus lab-grown jewelry primarily, at least in the US, it's been online, and the boomers and the millennials have seen CZ before, right? So they've seen what the old substitute was like. Now this one is identical, right? In so many ways. That's why once they see this, they will convert as well. Till now, they haven't seen it in person.
Also, I think there's a little bit of denial. I don't know if you agree, but, boomers and millennials have been buying diamonds for years while Gen Z hasn't, right? So when you buy diamonds at such a high price and suddenly you're told that the price of a natural diamond is down 40%, there is an element of denial before acceptance. 100%. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. The risk is it will turn people off from the category entirely.
Exactly.
Right? And they'll say, okay, they're not going to resell it because they don't want to lose 40%. But why buy further? Because it's not a great investment. So I think that's certainly a risk that's happening. I think, but as Gen Z goes, they're the early adopters for most technologies today. And then I think in this case, it was going to filter up. As soon as people see that there's not a jeweler in the world that under a 10x microscope or 30x microscope can tell the difference.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So as soon as people see that in a store, for example, it'll be like an aha moment. Oh, it's actually the same thing.
Only a highly specialized lab can tell the difference because of traces of nitrogen that are there in natural diamonds. So there's no human.
So you're telling me jewelers cannot tell the difference between natural and lab-grown?
Without a testing machine, no. Just with a loop, they cannot tell the difference because it's physically, chemically, optically identical. So it's the same thing.
Wow. Not too many people know this, by the way.
Yeah.
Or maybe not too many people accept it.
Correct. I think both are largely true.
And what about certification? Because, that was also sold to us in a big way that, if you have a certified diamond, then it's the right thing. But is there certification in lab grown?
There is. So IGI certifies both natural and lab the same way. They disclose whether it's lab or it's mined from the earth, but the certification process is the same. GIA has taken a slightly different approach, where they certify natural diamonds the way they historically have for decades. But for lab, they just put it as premium and standard. Those are the two categorizations that they've now adopted. But I think certification in general, whether it's lab or natural, diamonds or color, is a must, because it's super critical to know exactly what you're getting.
So, Ankur, what happens to this industry, the natural diamond industry, that has been, thriving for years? There are people who are sitting on inventory, right?
Yeah.
Crores of inventory. What happens to all of that?
Yeah. So let me start with retail and then maybe go back down the supply chain.
Yeah.
So I think if you fast forward 5 years, in terms of engagement rings, I think 80% ends up being lab and 20% becomes natural. So that 55-45 becomes 80-20. Where you have, let's say, a Tiffany, Bulgari, Harry Winston, Graf, that end of the market will always be natural because they need to sell at a certain price point. And lab, they cannot justify at that price point, so they will stay natural. You'll have some element of jewelers kind of below that threshold that will sell natural, primarily because of emotional reasons or because a customer wants something very specific, or the fact that it comes from the earth is valuable to them. But I think that's going to be the niche. The majority will end up being lab. And because the majority will end up being lab, you will see, I think, a few things happen. One is there will be a lot more consumption of gold and of silver because people are going to buy more jewelry because the diamond is less costly, so they can invest in gold and silver.
They can afford it.
Yeah. Exactly. As a percentage of the overall piece, gold will rise, diamonds will fall, but then you can afford a much bigger looking piece. I think we'll see a lot of bigger pieces, as Aditi was saying, with maximalism. But we also saw this tangentially in COVID. All of a sudden, because people were on Zoom calls or Google Meets, they started wearing bigger jewelry. So bigger earrings, pendants, and it completely changed how people perceive jewelry.
That really helped propel lab-grown diamonds as well. Because all of a sudden in this frame, you wanted larger studs and pendants. And you weren't traveling. So you're putting the money somewhere.
So I want to talk a little bit about diamonds as an investment, right? Because personally, I never invest in diamonds. I only invest in equities and gold and all of that. But you tell me from your vantage point, now since natural diamond prices have come off a lot, what is the kind of investment that I can make in lab-grown diamonds, for example, or even in colored gemstones? And what kind of asset appreciation are we looking at?
So I'll break it down. I'll start with diamonds. So diamonds have been negative over the last 10 years. So roughly they've lost 2% per year in value. I don't see that reversing course. They are far better to buy today than 3 years ago, certainly, because you can get them for 40% cheaper. But in terms of appreciation, largely, in my view at least, unlikely. You can take platinum, silver, and gold as kind of the three metals. Platinum has appreciated 4% per year for the last 10 years. Silver at 9%, gold at 14%. Gold has crushed it. Uday Kotak had this tweet that you may have seen where he said the Indian housewife is the best fund manager of all time. And that's largely true. That's exactly what has happened. And importantly for gold, if you look at a 30-year history, there's zero correlation between stock market returns and gold returns. And so in a portfolio, that is a great investment in general because they're uncorrelated assets. So those have done generally quite well. Gold has also, over the last 10 years, beat the S&P and the Sensex. So the Sensex has appreciated 11% per year, S&P 13%, gold 14%. And so that's roughly a 3.7x over the last 10 years, and it's kind of the holy grail. You get to wear it, enjoy it, and it's appreciating while you're wearing it. Gemstones have done tremendously well, up anywhere from 15% per year to 21% a year, depending on the gemstone. So sapphires and pearls, for example, at 15% per year. Stones like rubelites up 21% per year. Rubies up 19% a year. So a ruby that you bought 10 years ago versus now, it's worth 540% of what it was worth 10 years ago. So they've been tremendous investments.
So, in terms of natural gemstones, if I want to invest now, over the next 5 to 10 years, which is a good investment and what kind of appreciation do you see versus other assets?
I think the first one I would pick is rubies. They've done tremendously well over the last 10 years, but I think the reason they will do well in the future is now there's only one functional mine in the world, in Mozambique, that is producing gem quality rubies. And even that mine is depleting, where the amount of fine material that's coming out is less and less. At the same time, on the demand side, demand is explosive. So the US, it's growing very quickly, even with ruby engagement rings and so forth. So for example, Mark Zuckerberg bought Priscilla Chan a ruby engagement ring. He could have obviously bought anything in the world. That's what he went with. A lot of celebrities have gone
Trust
that
him
route.
to know what to invest into.
Yeah, he's done all right. Yeah,
He doesn't care about the flex appeal of a diamond.
And he bought a 1 carat ruby. He could have bought obviously a 100 carat ruby, but he was very specific. It was very intentional, the reason to buy it. But I think because supply is reducing, demand is exploding. China loves red as a color. And so demand there is also increasing. Demand in India will certainly increase as well. So you'll have like a perfect storm where demand will rise at the same time the supply is reducing. So I think that would be, I think in my view, that's the king of gemstones right now.
But globally, there would be a resale value of ruby. But do you see the resale value in India as well? Because it hasn't picked up as much as you said, right?
Yeah, so historically there has not been. And that's one of the fundamental challenges. If the Indian market looks at jewelry as an investment, how do you invest in gemstones? So part of our India entry was really to address this. We'll be the first market makers in gemstones more broadly. So we'll publish an annual appreciation or depreciation list for the top 40 gemstones. And so, for example, if rubies go up 20% next year, we will publish that they've gone up 20%. So when you come back to trade in or exchange, we will offer based on the appreciated value of investment gemstones. So making the market tradable, because it is relatively liquid, is a critical part. Gold is very liquid. Diamonds are less liquid. Color stones historically have been far more illiquid. And we aim to reverse that because we want to show the world that this is very much investable. As people that are buying from auction houses, Sotheby's, Christie's, Phillips have already realized, but we want the broader audience to see it as well.
Interesting. So, women, especially boomers and millennials, still live in denial about natural versus lab-grown diamonds, right? What is your argument to that?
So we sell both. So we're agnostic whether people buy natural or lab. There's no right answer. We aim to educate.
So you're saying that there is absolutely no difference chemically, visibly, optically between natural and a lab-grown diamond?
Correct. There's very small differences in growth structure. One grew over billions of years. The other was in a lab over a month, for example. One has traces of nitrogen, the other does not. So lab-grown does not have traces of nitrogen, for example. But ironically, the most coveted diamonds in the world, the Golconda mine diamonds, also are nitrogen-free. So they actually are what is kind of the ideal from that perspective. There's very small differences in growth structure, but that exists even in natural diamonds, whether it's mined in Botswana or elsewhere. There will be small nuances that are different. This is kind of the same way. But for all intents and purposes, they're identical. No jeweler in the world can tell the difference without specific testing equipment. So they're the same good. And we sell both. So yeah, our aim is just to educate. And it's up to the consumer to decide.
So you gave me some really good insights about what's happening in the US market. You said that, 55% of engagement rings now have the center as a lab-grown diamond. Can you share some more insights on how the US consumer is evolving? Because I noticed in India what happens is, whatever happens in the West, after 5, 6, 7 years, the trend starts picking up in India as well. So I just want to understand what is the US consumption psyche now, especially at a time when, the economy is also going through a bit of a slowdown. What are the big trends that you're seeing in the diamond market?
So I think 3 structural trends. One is gold has doubled over the last couple of years. And so the timing was very fortuitous that lab-grown came down in price and diamonds came down in price because you could still afford the piece you've always wanted because diamonds cost less, gold costs more, but on average, you're quits. So I think that was great. Second is I think we're seeing a lot more larger jewelry pieces. So Riviera necklaces, bigger studs, things like that historically we haven't seen. because people are enjoying wearing lab grown. And I think the third is the stigma is not there. We would have assumed that people would always ask, is this lab or natural? Now lab is perfectly acceptable. Because it's theoretically more sustainable. It's grown in a lab. Whereas to mine a 1 carat diamond from the earth, you have to displace 1 ton of dirt. But in this, you can produce lab grown diamonds fairly quickly and easily. So there's a sustainable element. There is it's much cheaper. It's up to 20 times cheaper. But there's a flex in that too, that you're buying something that's 20 times cheaper and it's the same good.
And ethical and sustainable.
Correct. So there's a lot going for it.
But do you see that mindset shift already? Because earlier it would be a flex to own a natural diamond, but now you're saying it's a flex to own a lab-grown diamond.
I think certainly Gen Z has bought into it completely. Yeah. The older generations, it's taking time. You want to talk a little bit about the survey? That would be pretty interesting.
Yeah, but I want to add one more point to, I think, a trend that we'll see in purchasing is that, early diamonds were natural diamonds with a financial flex, right? But now that you can tell the difference between lab and natural, what is becoming a trend there is going with iconic brands' design. India's always been big on design. We know that the larger diamond suites and necklaces, earring sets we've seen, but like a Bulgari Serpenti necklace. Now that we can tell whether you spent 50,000 on the earring, that Serpenti shows that you spent X amount on your jewelry, right? So the iconic designs are the ones in the future, I think, that will create that gap to show that you've spent X amount on and show that financial flex.
That's interesting. So you folks have about $100 million revenue, right, of the business up until now. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay. And in terms of growth, you were telling me about 70% of your business comes from colored gemstones. So in terms of growth from $100 million, how much do you look to take it up to? What could the growth rates be over the next couple of years?
Yeah, so if actually, so it took us 11 years to get from 0 to 10 million. It took us 5 years to get from 10 million to 100 million. So it's 2017 to 2022. We're on track to hit $1 billion in revenue by 2030, amongst the fastest growing jewelers in the world by far. We're unique in a lot of ways. One is we've never raised any venture capital money, whereas any other D2C brand worldwide that you'll see has raised substantial amounts. Principally for us, this was a 50-year play. We wanted to do for color what De Beers has done for diamonds and really promote the category. Whereas a VC investor is looking at a 5 to 10-year exit, and we have a much longer time horizon, so there was a mismatch there. Second is every piece we make is made to order. So for example, if you place an order now, the piece will go into casting in a couple of hours. It'll be cast in your ring size specifically. It'll be cast in the metal you choose, as well as the quality of gemstone that you choose and the size of gemstone and the shape of gemstone that you choose. So it's made just for you, but we're making that and we're delivering that within a week. And so it's a bespoke piece every time, but within a week. That allows us to have tremendous flexibility in terms of serving all demographics in the audience. And so the supply chain behind that is what we invested a lot of time and effort on. So we're also unique in the sense that we will buy rough from all over the world. So for example, rubies from Mozambique. Sapphires can be from Sri Lanka or Madagascar. Opals will be from Western Australia.
All natural.
All natural, correct. And so the sourcing is incredibly complicated. So we source those rough, basically rocks, cut and polish that primarily in-house. We design our own jewelry, manufacture our own jewelry, and retail over the web. We sell in the US, UK, Australia, Canada. We just expanded in India, as you know. But this year, we're also expanding into Japan, all 6 of the Gulf countries, as well as Singapore. So we're going to cover 70% of the market by mid next year.
But what's really fascinating to me is how in so many years, colored gemstones have not picked up in India, despite India having a large history in colored gemstones as well, right? So you, of course, explained why that is, because diamonds just had this large marketing strategy over the years. But now you see that changing.
Yeah, so we've been very pleasantly surprised by a few things here. One is the market here already understands gemstones fully. There's very little explanation needed. They understand it, they haven't been buying it. That's kind of what's kind of been happening. So for example, our number 1 selling gemstone is aquamarine. It's not the typical sapphire, emerald, ruby. Morganite does really well here. Pearls do really well here. It's a much broader aperture in terms of what people are buying.
Is it also very a religious or spiritual angle to it?
That's right. Astrological gemstones are a bigger part of it. And people just resonate with certain colors, or their astrologer had told them to wear something. And then, so, but the education level is really high already in terms of the different gemstones. And historically, we're talking about the Maharaja Patiala or the Nizam. They've been collecting gemstone jewelry for centuries. So it's embedded in our culture. But I think that the challenge has been two things. One is it hasn't been an investable purchase in the sense that it's very difficult to resell, which is what we aim to correct by making the market around it. And second is there hasn't been a lot of education around it, both on the appreciation side, what's already happening or what's been happening over the last 10 years, but there's a lot of confusion in terms of people will sell glass or glass filled or diffused or various other treatments that make a stone uninvestable and pass it off because the consumer doesn't know to ask those questions yet, which we aim to correct.
It's ironic, we talk about this, that 350 years ago, my family was called from Delhi to Jaipur to revive the art of Meenakari by the Maharaja of Jaipur. And after kind of succeeding in educating the American audience on colored gemstones, we're trying to bring colored gemstones back to India because color is so naturally a part of our DNA. It's the most colorful country in the world. And, it was here. But the focus has shifted a little bit. So with these appreciation reports and educating the customer, we're trying to have that revival again.
That's a great point, actually. A lot of things, right? A lot of sectors are seeing that, where Indian age-old historic traditions are taken to the West, and they kind of blew up there, become big trends there, and then they're brought back to India and sort of homegrown startups, etc., take it forward. But in terms of colored gemstones, when you talk about educating people, right, you said something which stood out for me, which is it's hard to resell a stone. So suppose I buy a ruby today, invest into it. Why is it so tough for me to resale, to get the proper resale value in India?
I think most jewelers, it's such a small percentage of their business that they're not really focused on it.
Okay.
Gold jewelry is clearly number one. Diamonds follow. But, that 2% of the market that is gemstone jewelry, that's divided between 40 different gemstones and all sorts of qualities and sizes and shapes. So even if the retailer buys it back, it's difficult for them to resell it. So that market overall needs to be made. Which is the onus is on us primarily to do that, and hopefully others also follow as well.
Okay, that's interesting. So that market has to still be developed, and you're saying this is a 5, 10, 15-year game in the gemstone jewelry space. Yeah,
so in the US, so we started the company in 2006 in the US. We launched our website. At that point, less than 7% of the US market was color. Now it's above 12%. And engagement rings have gone from 5% to 15% in the last 10 years. So it's going through its meteoric rise now. As we were mentioning, the West, India is following the West in some respects. And we're probably 3 to 4 years out from that type of trajectory here, because that primary demand in education needs to be built now. And then the takeoff will happen.
So you folks have been in this business for a really long time. I read somewhere, and you just mentioned that your family has been in it for over 300 years.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge legacy. Tell us a little bit about that.
So it's really interesting. Every summer coming to India, I'd see my grandfather kind of working with the karigars on the ground, making sure that each custom piece was made exactly right, with a lot of care and customization. And, somewhere at the back of my mind, maybe that part was there. And Ankur's family has also been in the gemstone industry for over 50 years. So when we started the business, when we decided to start a business, it was almost like the perfect marriage. How do we use customization and color and scale it using technology? And I don't know when I fell in love with jewelry. I think it's been different for both of us. But I think it's been naturally a part of my DNA versus Ankur kind of, circuited around the corporate route and, McKinsey and everything else. And then finally came back into the industry.
So you were with McKinsey before you started Angara?
Yeah, so I grew up in the industry, went to my father's office when I was from the age of 5 onwards on weekends. But wholesale never struck me as something I would live to do. So I took the typical other paths, Wharton, then McKinsey, then Harvard for business school. But at McKinsey, my largest project was with Tanishq in Bangalore. And that was the time where organized retail in India was growing very quickly. And Tatas were obviously at the forefront of that. But that's when I saw that there is a way to really change the game through organized retail. And so that's when I was like, jewelry is my calling. And Aditi already felt that way before, so then it was perfect from that perspective.
So it's interesting you say that because, of course, your brand is also competing with large players in this market, in the Indian market, that is, not globally. I speak specifically for India, right? With the Tatas, with the Aditya Birla Group and all of that.
Yeah.
How is that competitive intensity working out for you guys? I mean, how do you navigate through that?
I mean, I think we like to carve our own niche. I think it's about color for us. That is the primary focus, which a lot of the Indian market is not focusing on, right? So with these appreciation reports and all, I think it's about educating the customer, making sure we have full disclosure on anything we sell, whether it's lab, whether it's natural, color, diamond, wherever that is. So I think it'll take us a little bit of time to kind of build that trust in the market. But we're confident because we've done that in the US already. And so we just have to use that skill set and do that in India.
So the Tatas, Birlas, all of these big groups, they don't have any focus on colored gemstones?
Yeah, we actually need more competition, ironically.
To grow the market.
Yeah, so building primary demand is the hard part and it's the expensive part. So if we could be one of 10 to do that, then all we have to do is capture demand, which we're quite confident of. Now we have to invest in building the primary demand. So as an example, there's over 100 lab-grown diamond startups in India right now. There's 0 on the color side. So we're kind of doing it on our own, and we would just wish that more people would jump in so that we can build the market together.
Yeah, I guess if the larger players do a lot of the educating, you can just jump onto the bandwagon and capitalize on that. But you said there are over 100 startups in the lab-grown diamond space. And, every city that I visit, and I do a lot of tours for finance and, all these events, I notice every big city has lab-grown diamond startups springing everywhere. Has the competitive intensity eaten into your market share there?
Surprisingly not. So I'll give you some idea of our average price points and what we're seeing. So April to May, we grew 50%. At May to June, we grew 50%. We're likely to grow again at 50%. So our growth trajectory is very high, but we're doing it on a contribution margin positive basis. So we're profitable during the entire growth journey, which most other D2C worldwide is not. That being said, we're seeing a bifurcation. So on the color side, 5-to-1 is the ratio for natural to lab. On the diamond side, 3-to-1 the other way, where we're selling 3 times more lab grown than we are natural diamonds. But what's shocking to us is our average price point on lab is higher than for natural, which is completely counterintuitive. And I think the reason is people are now buying that 2, 3, 4, 5 carat piece, where they're buying much smaller natural diamond pieces in general. So in terms of...
So let me get this straight. So you're saying that an average person prefers to spend more money on a larger lab-grown solitaire than buying a small piece of a natural diamond solitaire.
Yeah.
And so the price points are higher in lab-grown.
Yeah. We thought people would do it to save money. People are actually buying whatever they've always wanted and perhaps could not afford before. And the same thing we're seeing in the US as well, coincidentally, where our lab-grown average ticket is higher than our natural average ticket. We did not anticipate that. We thought it was going to be 40 to 50% lower, but it hasn't been the case.
But why has lab-grown diamonds prices been falling so much over the last 6 months?
They can be produced in a lab. So they're being produced heavily in China and in India. And they're being produced at incredible scales. But I think it's getting to the point where I'm not sure how much further it can fall, in terms of the wholesale prices for lab-grown diamonds. So we're kind of reaching some sort of equilibrium. There's 3 main components to a cost of a lab-grown diamond. So there's the machine itself, which is getting cheaper every year, and it's getting more efficient as well. Then there's energy consumption. That has largely been relatively fixed. And then there's labor. These are still hand cut and polished. That part hasn't gone away. So whether you're hand cutting and polishing a natural diamond or a lab grown, the process is pretty similar.
But labor costs must be cheap.
Yeah, labor costs are cheap, but as a percentage of lab-grown diamonds, they're relatively high because machinery is quite cheap on a per carat basis, and energy is also relatively cheap. So now the majority will end up being labor for the lab-grown variety. For natural, as you're saying, it is a very low percentage of the overall pie for natural diamonds.
No, but here when we talk just about lab grown and
Yeah.
the fact that lab grown prices have fallen quite a bit,
Yeah.
do you fear that it could fall some more if production, I mean, as you're saying, right, China is going big on lab grown as
Yeah.
well. Do
Yeah.
you think they could bring down costs, bring down prices a lot more?
It's possible. But I think we're getting to the point where it's like an asymptotic curve. At some point, it kind of reaches an equilibrium. We're
Plateaus, yeah.
close there now.
Okay.
But even if it does, it's great because consumers can buy more.
Yeah.
So it expands the market.
Yeah.
So I think that would be a lovely result if that
But
happens.
does it, is the viability of the business something that could be questioned if prices fall further? I mean, profitability, would that be a challenge?
I think volume will make up
Volume.
for whatever drop is from here on out. I think that getting from 400 billion to $1 trillion is more and more viable the more prices fall on the lab side. So it's great.
Wow, this was so informative for me. I mean, I had no clue all of this is happening in the market. I just knew that, of course, natural diamond prices are falling and lab-grown diamond, demand is rising quite a bit. But to educate me on this colored gemstone business, thank you so much. It was a pleasure speaking to both of you. And, just some final thoughts, because I do know that you guys are doing a lot of work in this entire space. What does the future look like for Angara? Like, where do you see your company headed over the next 5-10 years? Aditi?
So we're starting, opening our first stores actually in India. That's a big change for us because in all the other countries that we've opened in before, we've never had a single store. It's been only online. So India will, early next year, will open our first experience center in Jaipur. And then Bangalore, Delhi, and Bombay simultaneously early next year as well.
So that is the first store which will be just complete fine jewelry or only dedicated to lab?
Complete fine jewelry. So we'll sell both natural and lab in all of them as well. And colored gemstones, of course, our core business. Yeah. So that's a really big change for us.
And in terms of markets, is India a big chunk of your market, or is this still a growing piece in the overall revenue pie?
It's growing, of course, overall in the revenue pie, but we expect it to be about 20% of our business by 2030.
Okay. And currently, your largest chunk of your business comes from the US?
The US, yes.
Okay, wow. And what about you? I mean, I'm sure you have, you don't have to have common goals, you
Yeah. Yeah, no, fair enough. So I think we get to $1 billion in revenue by 2030. And I think by 2040, we get to 10 billion in revenue. So we're only 1% of the way there. So we're still very much starting in this journey. Our aim is to build the market for color worldwide, which is luckily due to a lot of forces outside of us that's already happening, and then to capture that market. Everything we're doing is kind of structured in that manner, where we're really looking at the world as we want to provide Fifth Avenue or Rodeo Drive quality, but at half the price. That's the fundamental value proposition, and we're capturing the market in that way. And consumers around the world are resonating with that idea. So we're super bullish.
Wow, I'm so excited for your journey, and thank you so much to both of you for being here. It was a pleasure speaking to you. And of course, when you have your new launch, when you have your first store, there's going to be a lot more talk around that. So congratulations on that in advance. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure being here. Thank you.